Coach, before you got here, you had this program has been on a big roller coaster. 0-10, 1-9 to the Dome, back down again,
Sure.
and since you've been here, they've been on a steady climb upward. How do you keep it going so you don't go back down to where before?
Yeah, I think it comes down to the culture. I think what we tried to do as soon as I got here was to change really the culture, to change what I thought needed to be done for our team to be successful. And for me, it's not about building a team, it's about building a program. And in order to do that, it's got to be who's the next man up. It's got to be, pass the torch, who's going to run this next leg of the race. And I think what we've accomplished in 3 years is our seniors and our parents understand that there's a legacy to be left, and so just because we went 9-3 last year, yes, that's great, we had a great season, but we haven't done some of the things that need to get done. We haven't won a district championship. Gosh, you can go look outside in that banner and it's 91 and 96. We're going to 2018. It's a long time before we've hung a district banner up in football. We made it to the Dome, but we haven't won a championship. So for me, it's more about how did it happen? I think it happened based off of the culture that we tried to create, and I think our kids and our parents have bought in, and I'm a firm believer that it takes 3 years to develop a positive relationship with someone. And we're now going on our 4th year, and I think if you look at year 3, that's pretty evident. We went 9-3 and we had a nice year, and our hope is to have a better year than what we had last year.
You talk about next man up under center for you.
Sure.
The next man up is Dawson. Mm-hmm. Not having to replace Christopher from last year, but what different threats and what different options does he give you when he has the ball in his hands?
Sure. To me, there's a lot of similarities between between both kids. Excuse me. They, for the most part, quiet, don't speak a lot, very humble kids, excellent in the classroom, excellent athletes. The biggest difference that I see in Dawson and Chris is their running style. Chris is more, I'm going to bring the hammer to you, and Dawson's going to, I think, make a lot of people miss. He's got that kind of, he's got that kind of factor with him. And I think a lot of that is attributed to his early basketball career. You can see traces of his basketball career show up on the football field, and just kind of how he does and kind of the way he moves. I think he's a little bit, I don't want to say he's finesse, because that gives the impression that he's not going to go run you over, but I think his first instinct is he's going to try and make you miss, where Chris, on the other hand, was, I'm going to run you over. Really similar in athleticism, but at the same time slightly different. We're really excited about having Dawson. He has a lot of experience for us. He's going into his 3rd year as a starter. He started as a sophomore on defense. He started last year as a slot receiver and a running back for us, and so for him to assume the role at quarterback isn't going to be as big of a challenge as I thought it was going to be for Chris last year. Chris was primarily a defensive player and hadn't played any offense, and we took a big risk in getting him and putting him in that position. He filled a role 2 years ago when Timmy got hurt, when Timmy McDonald got hurt. So I think this transition between Chris and Dawson are going to be a little bit easier for us on our part as coaches than maybe it was last year with Chris assuming the role at the quarterback. Not because Chris wasn't capable, just because of his past experiences.
Coach, just talk about your overall, what do you perceive to be your overall strengths and weaknesses on both sides of the ball? Just go ahead.
I think the biggest challenge that we're going to face, it's no secret, you lose 2 Division I athletes. And you lose a guy like Chris Ravensteiner, who was, 5th in the metropolitan area rushing, whether it be actual rushing yards or touchdowns. So you lose Seth Caillouette and you lose Christian Haas, and then those are your big name guys that you lose. But what goes, I guess unheard or unseen is I had 2 other offensive linemen that had played as juniors and sophomores. So we really are replacing 4, because we play with the tight end.
Right.
We're really replacing 4 of the 6 guys. I think I wouldn't call it a weakness. I think that's our biggest challenge. Now, we have definitely the bodies to be able to fill in that role and in those spots, those vacancies. But with that being said, that's going to be our challenge this upcoming August is to get those guys ready. Defensively, gosh, the guy we lose is Trey Nunez, and he was a defensive lineman for us last year, and we lose his leadership. But we bring back all 10 other guys, and even though we're losing Trey, we had 5 or 6 guys that played on the defensive line. So we're bringing back a lot of experience, really across the board. Where we're not bringing much experience back is the offensive line. But with our offensive line coach, I feel pretty confident that we'll be able to do what needs to be done.
After you lose a hoss like Haas, and Calumet did just about everything.
Everything.
I mean, the guy was everything. How hard is it? I mean, you don't replace those guys, but how hard is it to even begin to fill those guys' shoes?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, it's kind of one of those things when you have a kid that's like that, or you have multiple kids that like that. Hopefully, as a coach, you start game planning that early enough on who you think that slot those next guys up. You know, for us, you know, the guy that we're looking at to replace Seth is Spencer Georges. That's actually Carter Georges, was a big-time player for us last year defensively. That's his younger brother, and he's going to step in as a sophomore and have the potential to take that spot. We have an abundance of offensive linemen to kind of figure out this three-man guy who's going to create, like, who's going to fill these vacancies. We got a few seniors and we got a few juniors and that can possibly do it. Tyler Pezos is a senior, Steven Landesh, and Trent Zeldin, and then we have Evan Burgess, who played some for us last year. He was more of a rotating guy than he really was a starter, but he filled the need for us when he was our sixth guy, you know. So those are our four seniors, and then juniors, we got Jackson Bolner, Nick Vaccaro, Grant Wyndham. Like I said, they're all able bodies. It's just a matter of who's going to go win the job. So it's nice to think about, you have 7 guys to fill 3, and you return 2 guys with a ton of experience. So that gives me, that's why I don't necessarily know if it's a weakness. It's our biggest challenge, to replace those guys. But we've kind of already started thinking about that before they left.
Right.
You know,
right.
I mean, that was kind of something we started to address, like, all right, who do we think, who can those guys possibly be, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
You talked about up front. Let's talk about the skill positions here.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, you know, moving Dawson from wide receiver to here, but some of the people that he's going to have to throw to, you know, first off, what are some of those wide receivers? And then how does his experience in being a wide receiver maybe make Dawson a more effective quarterback than you may think?
Yeah, no, I mean, so I think Dawson's going to handle his quarterback position exceptionally well because of all the things he has experienced. That's one of the reasons why I said I think it's going to be a little bit more seamless of a transition, because he's already done a lot of these things. You know, when you're a defensive back, you better understand what receivers are trying to do and quarterbacks trying to do. When you're a receiver, you have to know. You know, so I think that's going to help him tremendously in fitting in that role. You know, the guys that he's going to have a chance to throw the ball to are going to be, you know, 2 seniors that started for us last year, Jacob Godet, who's also our punter, and Daniel Labradette. I mean, they're 2 big, tall, lean frame guys that can do it for us. Not only can they catch, but they can also block. I think that's probably one of the best things that we return in terms of our offense is, you know, Chris and Brendan David were our feature guys, right? Chris was the quarterback, Brendan was our running back, Chris 2,400, Brendan 1,000, right? But that just didn't happen. And yeah, you need offensive linemen, but you need perimeter guys too to do that. And so those guys, I think, are going to be, you know, that's something that we're looking to have them repeat that and actually build upon what they started last year for us in the blocking and the perimeter. And I also think we have a lot of depth at the receivers. You know, we have some younger guys that are going to come in and really help. You know, and I think the biggest guy that we have adding to our team is Norris Williams. You know, Norris is a kid that played football really when he was a freshman and decided to kind of focus on basketball, and he's making another attempt to come out to play football, and I think that's gonna help us, and I think it's gonna help him too in his overall career as an athlete.
Did you have to talk him into playing?
No, actually, you know what? To be honest with you, he's really toyed around this idea for a while now. It's not something like he just like magically like, oh, I'm just gonna, you know, he had an epiphany or anything. That wasn't it. He had talked about it, but I think he saw, man, this is my senior year. I got one senior year, and he's got a lot of buddies that are in the football program. I think he's always liked what we've done as a program. I just think now that I think it's kind of ending his high school career, he'd like to finish out and not have any regrets. I think if you were to ask him that. So I mean, I think to answer your question, Dawson thinks he's going to do a fine job there. We got plenty of receivers, young guys that got a chance to step up. You know, we returned Jacob and Daniel. You know, we got another senior that didn't get as much playing time last year, but will get a lot this year. Is Victor Harvey. He's our stud soccer player, our all-state soccer. He's our all state track. I mean, so we add him to the mix of it. You know, we got a junior, Ezra Travers, who was hurt a lot last year, but he's a real special athlete. We got Cade Hontiveros, who's going to be a sophomore. So we have a bunch of guys. It's just a matter of how are we going to make it work for us offensively with them, because they all have different skill sets. One of the nice things about Seth was you never had to take him off the field. You could put him wherever you want, right? He could play tight end on one snap. He could play running back. He could play fullback. He could play outside receiver, inside receiver. This year, we're going to have to be a little bit different because we don't have that one guy that can just do it all. We got a bunch of guys that can do, in their own way, what God's given talent that they have, and we're just going to have to figure out how to put that all on the field when we need it, when we want it.
My last question. You're a year into 7-3A now.
Yeah.
What did you learn about your opponents in the district and the field that you hope to take advantage of? Like, I guess lessons learned from last year you hope to apply in 2018.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, first off, I'm sorry, we had you know, our district we actually have a small district. We don't have a very large district, but the quality of opponents in our district is top notch. You know, I think the lesson learned was not so much from what the district opponents gave us, but really about how to play deep and towards the tail end of the season. I think that's the biggest thing. When you have those monsters kind of towards the end of it, is getting yourself ready for that. And not that we weren't ready, but I think at some point in time when you've never experienced it before, there is kind of this initial shock. I don't see that being the case for us moving forward. As far as the division, when we get into the playoffs, man, that's a different story. You know, when you got a chance to play St. Thomas More, has got 1,200 students, and you got a chance to play Turlins Catholic, that's got 900. You know, you've got to be prepared. You know, and so I think my goal, my mindset was to take the lessons that we learned in district with, you know, towards the tail end and getting us ready for our playoff run against possibly a lot bigger of opponents. You know, physically, but also just larger student populations.
Albany and LaRange both lost a lot of players, just like you did. So it's kind of an interesting thing where, you know, all three of the teams, and you throw in Sumner however you want.
Right.
You're all sort of in I don't want to call it coaches hate transition year, but
right.
It's a new team.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I think that goes for any year. You know, I mean, gosh, I mean, you know, you take one injury from one team, and that could change the whole outlook of a team's, you know, successes. So, you know, yeah, I mean, I think they got quality coaches, quality kids, and quality programs. And, you know, Jules Sumner obviously last year didn't do as well as I think they've done in the past, but that doesn't mean they can't emerge. You know, and I think, I guess the biggest thing is, and I don't know if y'all know this, but we have 6 teams on our schedule that all have new head coaches. You know, and so whenever you get a new head coach, there's always that chance of, man, I mean, we went 1-9 to 7-3 like that, and I think we were the surprise of the year in a lot of ways, especially in the metropolitan area. And so when you get a new man in charge, you get somebody new leading the ship, you know, you never know what's going to happen. So we got a lot of work to do. We got a lot of stuff that we need to get better at before the season starts. But I like where we're at, and I think we're moving in the right direction.